Alrighty guys, so we are going to read chapters 8 and 9 in our Viking ships at sunrise, okay? Then we'll just have one more chapter of this book and we will be moving on to October Ogre, okay? So,
That's like Shrek.
let's go, it is like Shrek. Let's go ahead and read chapters 8 and 9. Remember, Jack and Annie got swept out into the sea on the Viking ship. So, chapter 8 is Lost at Sea. Annie fell to the deck of the ship. Jack pulled the rope out of the water. The end of it was still tied in a loop. "What happened?" asked Annie. "We're headed out to sea," said Jack. "I guess all the pulling lifted the rope off the rock." Annie sat up and looked at the misty whiteness. "I can't see the island," she said. I can't see anything," said Jack. Annie looked at Jack. "Do you think this is our darkest hour?" she asked. "I don't know," said Jack. "Maybe the book will help." He pulled out their research book. He found a picture of a Viking ship and he read the caption aloud. Viking warships were the best ships of their times. When there was no wind, the crew would take down the sails and row with oars. The smallest ships had 4 rowers and the largest had as many as 32. Rowers sat on the boxes that stored their belongings. "Great," said Annie, jumping up. "This isn't our darkest hour." "Why do you say that?" asked Jack. "There's still hope," said Annie. "We can row to the other side of the island and find the treehouse." "Are you nuts?" said Jack. "Please, Jack," said Annie. "Can we just try?" She grabbed one of the oars. She could barely lift it. "Forget it, Annie," said Jack. "It takes 4 big Viking guys to row this thing. You're too little. I'm too little." "Come on, Jack, just try," said Annie. "You get an oar too. We'll sit on boxes across from each other." "Oh, brother," said Jack. Annie dragged her long oar over to a storage box. "I'm not doing this alone," she said. Jack groaned. Then he dragged an oar to the box across from Annie. "Cool," said Annie, and she peered into a storage box. "Look, one for each of us." She lifted out 2 small Viking helmets. "Maybe these were made for Viking kids who sometimes ride in this ship," said Annie. "Maybe," said Jack. He hadn't thought of Vikings as real people before. People with families and little kids. Annie pulled off her scarf and put a helmet on her head. "Now I feel like a Viking too," she said. "I bet it will help me to row." Excuse me.
Yawns.
I had a yawn. She handed Jack the helmet. He put it on. It made him feel a little different. "I don't know about this," he said, and the helmet wasn't as heavy as the one he had worn in the time of castles, but it was still pretty heavy. "Well, I'm braver with mine on," said Annie. Jack smiled. He didn't know how Annie could be braver than she already was. "Ready to row?" she asked. "Yep," said Jack. He was feeling braver himself. The wind picked up as Jack lifted his heavy oar over the side of the ship. He lowered it into the water, but the current was so strong that the oar was ripped from his hands. Jack fell over backward as his oar slipped into the sea. "I lost my oar!" Annie yelled. Jack looked up as rain started to fall. The sky was black. A gush of seawater poured over the side of the ship. "Brrr," said Annie as she tried to stand. The black sky shook with thunder and flashed with lightning. Jack crawled to the side of the ship and pulled himself up. Another huge wave was coming right towards them. "It's our darkest hour now," cried Annie. "Get Brother Michael's book." Jack reached into his leather bag. He pulled out the jeweled book and held it up. "Save us, Story," he cried, and he looked at the sea again. What he saw made him scream. Rising from the oncoming wave was a giant sea serpent. Chapter 9, Sea Monster. The serpent's head rose higher and higher above the water. Jack couldn't move. "He's beautiful," said Annie. Beautiful, cried Jack. The serpent's neck was as tall as a 2-story building. Its green scales were covered with sea slime. Go away, shouted Jack. No, stay, help us, said Annie. The great serpent glided closer to the ship. Jack ducked. Come on, said Annie. You can do it. Get us to shore before the ship sinks. Jack closed his eyes, and he felt the ship jerk, then move forward. He looked up. They were gliding over the giant waves. Jack turned. The great serpent was pressing its long neck against the back of the ship, pushing it toward the shore. As the serpent pushed them, the wind grew calmer. The clouds lifted, and the water glittered with sunlight. The rocky shore grew closer. Jack could see the treehouse on the ledge above it. Hurry, Annie called to the serpent monster. The great serpent gave the ship one last push. The ship swooshed onto the sandbar near the shore. Jack put the jeweled book carefully back into his bag. Then he and Annie climbed out of the ship onto the wet sand. They looked back at the sea. The great serpent was rearing its long neck into the air. Its scales glittered pink and green in the sunlight. I bet that was pretty, pink and green.
Yeah.
Bye, shouted Annie. Thanks a lot. The monster seemed to nod at her. Then he dove into the sea and was gone. Jack and Annie headed toward the rocks. All of a sudden, Annie gasped. Uh-oh, she said, pointing to the top of the cliff. 2 Vikings were staring down at them. To the treehouse, cried Jack. The Vikings shouted and started down the steep stairs. Jack and Annie began scrambling up the rocks. They reached the treehouse and climbed inside. Jack grabbed the Pennsylvania book. Annie stuck her head out the window. Go home! Stop causing trouble, she yelled to the Vikings who were almost to the ledge. Jack pointed at the picture of the Frog Creek woods. I wish we could go there, Jack shouted. Just as the Vikings reached the ledge, the wind began to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. All right, that's going to be the end of chapter 9. Tomorrow we will read chapter 10, and remember that's the end of this story, and we'll move on to October Ogre, okay?
Okay.